Toontown servers have hundreds of NPCs in the game, whether they're older ones or newer ones. There's definitely a bunch of them that do exist in Toontown. Some of them are for the game's lore, they've played an important part of the game's task line, or they're there for a nice joke or reference. However, for the past 8 years of Toontown servers existing, I've noticed a little bit of a trend. A trend with a few specific NPCs in the game. There will be certain characters that will just not be used and forgotten altogether from these servers, and they'll do their best to make sure that they never existed in the first place. So today, I wanted to go over a few examples of Toontown characters that slip from the cracks of the game. Now, when I talk about this, you might think some easy candidates like Slappy. Well, yeah, this is true. Toontown written for the past 5 years has not acknowledged him, but I wouldn't say he's completely forgone as people still talk about him and hope for his return. Well, then maybe the Fizzentons. Well, they died, but not forgotten. So who could I be talking about? Well, one of them is a mouse and is pretty popular and known by the world, and at first servers actually liked having him around here, but as time went on, each Toontown variation removed him. That's right, you guessed it, Donald Frump. Now you might have a lot of questions already, one of them being, what? Donald Frump? That's an actual toon? Well yeah, in the Berg and the Two-Pate Shallot, he's actually present in the game. I'm assuming the only reason why he was here was just a reference to him back in the day, and that's really all he ever was. No one really cared about him all too much, and he really didn't serve much purpose besides being a placeholder, and didn't really have any toon tasks. So what's the big deal? Nothing much, but around 2016 to 2017, this character would see kind of a resurgence. With the main reason being the 2016 election. During this time, games like Toontown Rewritten would actually start making jokes around him, parroting what Trump had said in the blog post, "Go out and vote." In this, they were basically poking fun at him with what he was saying things like,
"I've seen Toonfest, and let me tell you, we've got the best Toonfest around. We're making Toonfest great again. It's gonna be huge. I respect Toonfest more than anyone, and we are bringing this Toonfest in the big league, and the Cogs are paying for it."
I'm not kidding, that was an actual blog post from Toontown Rewritten in 2016. Along with making jokes about him, during this time, people were actually creating their own memes with him. Things like the name changes for the playgrounds, fan art of Donald Frump. People even made their own hats with Donald Frump, and yes, Smirky did make that. He probably looks at that photo with great shame. People made their own jokes around Donald Frump with making them Cogs, and even one being an actual boss of Donald Trump. Yeah, this was a weird kind of time for Toontown. People made a lot of these jokes back then. Everyone at this time liked to poke fun at this Toontown NPC, since it was kind of a fun joke. It didn't even end after the 2016 election, as he was still referenced again in Toontown Project Altus in the 2017 April Fool's event. During this time, Flippy was actually removed from office with Donald Frump, and in Toon Hall being called Donald Frump's White House. However, after the April Fool's update, it seemed like the joke did die down for a little bit. People would occasionally bring him up here and there, but for the most part, the meme was kind of over. However, as time went on, he pretty much vanished into thin air. Not that anyone forgot about him, but Toontown servers wanted you to forget about him. Toontown Corporate Clash actually had removed him from the game and replaced him with a different NPC. They replaced him with a toon named Don D. Toupee. It slightly resembles him and the older name, but it definitely seems like they didn't want him to be called Donald Frump. However, it gets even stranger with Toontown Rewritten. Now let's go back to that blog post from all the way back in 2016. So what's so strange about this blog post is now that they completely removed the Donald Frump quote. It's really strange when you think about it, because why would they just go out of their way to remove a quote from 2016 when it seems like hardly anyone would notice or even care enough to look back at that older blog post? However, when Toontown Rewritten was asking if they would like to see people replace some of the NPCs, and they voted that they'd like to see some change, guess who they also got rid of during that time? He's been replaced with another toon named Harold Hairless. Now, I can totally see why he's gone. People have been more cautious with this character, and I'll let you decide why most of these servers don't really want him. He still exists in servers like Toontown Offline, Tooniversal, Operation Desert Storm, but still, it's a really interesting case of a Toontown NPC who was loved for a little while, all of a sudden vanish. Now, while Donald Frump's disappearance in Toontown was probably understandable, what about Loopy Goopy G? Now, you might be thinking, what am I talking about? He's a YouTuber, and while yeah, he doesn't post often, he hasn't vanished. However, his appearance in Corporate Clash and Tooniversal have both been removed. So in Project Altus, Loopy Goopy G actually did appear in the game when he was working on Project Altus. Now, Loopy Goopy G had an ongoing joke in the unused building in Loopy Lane in a shop he called Loopy's Balls. I could probably see why that got taken down. However, it stayed in Project Altus for a while, and even coming back for the task line in Toontown Corporate Clash. In the game, it was a side mission for you to get the Loopy's Balls outfit, where it was just a meatball outfit. But even more strange was the merch of it made. During the Break the Law event, they would even make a Loopy's Balls bookmark that they would give people for the prize pack if you won the raffle. In the game Universal Studios as well, in Acorn Acres, he was actually an NPC roaming in the area. I also forgot to bring this up that in Universal Studios there was even a cheesy effect unite where it let you be Loopy Goopy G, and on top of that there was even a unite that would literally direct you to Loopy Goopy G's Twitch channel. Now I can't find any photos of this or really any proof of it, but it did end up getting removed. Even Smirky had this for him as well. He was even in the game in Donald's dock, but he ended up getting removed as well. Now this is all nice and dandy, but out of nowhere he vanished from both of them. Now I feel like why they removed it was possibly because the name Loopy's Balls sound really suggestive, even for Toontown. And while it is true they did rename the shop to be called Loopy's Meatballs, I think they just realized after a while they should just get rid of it entirely. It didn't help that people criticized the shop's inclusions for its name as well. I think they also wanted to remove staff inserts in the game as well, so there was always that possibility. In Universal's case, they had all of the staff members as NPCs in the game, but I'm assuming they thought any one of these people can leave at any moment, making them completely outdated, so I guess they decided to make their own original NPCs instead of just having it being staff members. It's weird to see him added in both and just gone in both. Even real quickly in Clash, there was actually another NPC that's been removed called Bouncer Bongo. He was the one who would actually host clubs in Toontown Corporate Clash in the Toon Hall here. However, ever since its temporary removal, this character has also never been seen ever again. And even though they're reintroducing clubs, his toon is no longer to be seen anymore. Now, sometimes it's not just toons that vanish from Toontown, they can also be Cogs as well. Now, I'm not talking about like the retextures of Cogs or different models of them. How about certain Cogs getting removed and replaced? Operation Desert Storm has had an update redoing the tech bots, and during the update, 2 Cogs that were in the game for well over 4 years were removed and replaced, being the software Simeon and the keyboard Cowboy. And in their place was the Python Charmer and the keyboard Warrior. Personally, I think these Cogs are better than those other ones. While the Python Charmer's design is a little odd, I kinda actually like this one a little better. It's also getting another revision, which I actually do think this one also looks a little better. But yeah, it's a pretty big step up in the Cog reskins. Still though, long live those Cogs. I can't say about these guys though. So the big ones everyone probably knows about, but everyone's forgotten about, are the Mickey Mouse NPCs and the characters in Toontown. Now these characters are removed from every Toontown game, or most Toontown games, but think of any Toontown server you can think of, and it's most likely they're not in it. Now, I'm not only just talking about the NPCs, even things like any graphic of them or any mention of them in some servers are completely removed. Now, they originally came from a completely different game called Toontag, and the game itself is actually obscure on its own. It was basically just a tag game as you would play as these Disney characters in Epcot. After Toontag, it appears that these models were actually reused for Toontown Online as just NPCs for their corresponding playgrounds, Mickey in Toontown Central, Donald in Donald's Dock, Minnie in Minnie's Melodyland, and of course, Goofy and Daisy's Gardens, you know, all for their respective playgrounds. As time went on, they would make more things like Donald Sleeping, Pluto, Daisy, Clarabelle, and Chip and Dale. They would each be a part of their own playground with their own decorations and story, kind of. While they weren't really given any story, it was more so just Mickey was the mayor and each of their friends each own a playground for the toons. Basically, that was just all of their purpose in the game. Mickey was also seen for the Japanese art along with Flippy and the other toons, making him feel more like he was part of the main game's story in a way. Again, while Toontown Online itself only treated these characters as NPCs who roamed around, they were definitely trying to include them with other parts of the game. They even got Halloween variants of their designs as well. However, as time went on, Toontown Online would shut down, and with its closure, it was up for fans to bring it back to life, and they did. However, a pretty key part to Toontown Online that was missing in most of these fan servers starting up were the Disney characters. Now, none of them were actually present in any of these servers besides Toontown House when it came out. Toontown Written, they were nowhere to be found in the game's alpha. However, they didn't ignore their existence as they were even shown early on in their blog post, and something I actually did not know was that they updated Clarabelle on the phone to give her her own voice. So they did have some care for them, and they ended up keeping Minnie and Match Minnie. It was always a gamble to see some of these servers to include them or not. Toontown House did, Toontown Rewritten didn't, Toontown Offline did, Toontown Infinite wouldn't. However, none of these servers up until these points wouldn't modify the game to remove all instances of them, as they were just only the NPCs that were gone. It would seem like this change would become more and more noticeable in the game Operation Desert Storm, as most mentions of the characters were mostly removed. They removed Donald Duck with this white duck named Donald, got rid of the Disney icons and whatnot, and even in the refrosted texture pack removed all of the Disney character textures. However, they seem to kind of double down on this since recently in 2021 they reintroduced Mickey Mouse to the game, and they also kept the playground names the same as well. However, Toontown Rewritten, Toontown Corporate Clash, and Tooniversal would help make the Disney characters even more obscure. Toontown Rewritten has pretty much confirmed they don't want them back, as Joey has not even mentioned their names and just said they wanted them gone. Toontown Corporate Clash removed all the textures and any mention from them for their game to renaming anything that would have included them, and so did Tooniversal. Tooniversal originally did have the Disney characters roaming around, but then later changed it to be staff members, but then changed them to be their own characters while renaming the locations as well. However, you really have to think, why are these servers doing this and getting rid of them? Especially when Disney wanted them in the game. Well, it could be for a few reasons. Number 1. The fear of copyright. Now, this is a weird paranoia that I kinda understand to an extent. Some of these servers are worried that adding the Disney characters could be a little more risky considering it's an active Disney property that Disney has shown time and time again that they're pretty protective over. However, this is a weird claim considering I don't think Disney care at all. Now, I'm not saying that Disney doesn't care if their properties are being used in things they don't condone, but I'm saying this as Toontown is still a Disney property that's still being actively used. The parks still use the phrase Toontown, and they still legally own the game Toontown, so it being alive is copyright in itself. They could take Toontown down at any moment they like, and I'm not sure if adding Mickey Mouse and friends would make Disney more likely to shut down the game. I think it's been kind of clear that Disney is alright with Toontown being a thing as long as there's no profits or anything illegal, or even bad that's happening to make the Toontown name look bad, and so far that really hasn't happened yet. We have seen this with Club Penguin with how careless people are with it, and I'm sure the Toontown community is just trying its best for that not to happen. But then again, I really don't see an issue if he comes back. With some games having it, it seems like there's no problem with having them back. But again, games like Toontown Rewritten said that they didn't want to add them back in fear of any association with the Disney IP. And while that's fair, the Disney characters are all over Toontown Rewritten, so I don't know if that really works. But really, if copyright was the problem, then why doesn't Toontown Rewritten also remove every instance of the Disney characters? Why do they have the Mickey icons or Goofy's gag shops? Why don't they just pull a Clash and rename all of the playgrounds and cover up everything if they're truly afraid of copyright? You can't tell me icons of them and him being physically in the game are just two separate things. Better yet, if this was a fear, why is Minnie and Clarabelle still in the game? Why don't they just remove them if they fear this? This is why the reason of copyright always seemed to confuse me here. I'm genuinely curious because I don't know too much about copyright law, but I just don't really see an issue on bringing them back, other than they just don't know how to bring them back, or they just don't want them back for other reasons. And that leads into my second possibility to why they don't want them back. Number 2. Story. Now, this reason I kinda get. You could not convince me that Clash would ever bring them back. They have their own story, their own version of Toontown, and they do not want Disney lore being added to the game, because what purpose does that even serve? None, really. With games like Toontown Corporate Clash, and I guess Toontown Rewritten and Tooniversal, their version of Toontown doesn't really include them, unless you want to go through the effort of putting them in the game story, and all the other things they have to do to make it work. To be fair, Tooniversal doesn't really have any. They could add them if they really wanted to, but Toontown Rewritten and Toontown Corporate Clash kind of established it already. I guess you could technically say the Disney characters do exist in the game, which, since yes, Minnie and Clarabelle do exist in Toontown Rewritten right now, but Gyro Gearloose you could say is Dr. Surly with how the game's story is. However, arguing that Toontown Rewritten should bring them back is like arguing to a brick wall. It's just not gonna happen. They've already made it clear. Clash as well, I feel like adding them to the game, while I'm not a big fan of their story, would just make it worse in my opinion. You also gotta remember that none of these servers hardly care about doing anything with these Disney characters. Their only purpose for like the past 20 years is just them roaming around the playground, and most of these games don't really care enough to make them part of anything major, besides like maybe Dr. Surly. I've seen some try, but in the end, not really do much with it. Sure, you don't need them for story or any reason for them to come back, but then again, it just seems like a design choice for these games for them not to come back. I do think covering them up with some examples can be a little weird, like the Clash statue actually has the characters' heads cut out with tunes, which I found a little odd. Personally, I think it would have been a better choice just redoing the whole statue in general, but if I'm being honest, I'm gonna look at this statue like once and then I'm never gonna pay attention to it ever again. It would be cool to see these servers actually do something with these Disney characters. Maybe Operation Desert Storm will, maybe some other servers, but I highly doubt the big servers will do something with them. And while personally, I don't care about their disappearance all that much, and in fact, I don't think a lot of people do, it's a very interesting case of some kind of major Toontown content being mostly shut out from the game. I feel like even if they did come back, it would just be the most, oh, that's kind of cool, and then just continue as if nothing happened. You could say that for all the other NPCs that have been removed that I talked about here, but the whole situation for the classic characters being gone is a very interesting case, but at the end of the day, it seems like most of these servers, we won't be seeing much of them there. Now for our final character, this is a little interesting. Tutorial Tom. Now you might be wondering, he hasn't vanished. However, there's something different about this character. We might all know Tom for having this design, just a bump on his head. However, this was not the real Tutorial Tom. He's known for having a different shaped head, but it looks like most of these servers opted to give him this slight redesign. So what's up? Why did they do that in the first place? Well, it's actually kind of weird. So originally, Tom wasn't supposed to be this design in Toontown Online. In fact, Disney made an error. He was supposed to be like how he is in Toontown Rewritten because his animations in the tutorial don't exactly work with the head he has. His ears are supposed to go up, but as we see in the Toontown Online tutorial, they don't do that, so they restored him to have his animations work properly. It's a very weird case of an NPC given a slight redesign over something that's very little, but it's even more weird to see that there's two different versions of Tutorial Tom that exist in these Toontown servers. And yeah, that kind of wraps up with all I gotta say about the forgotten characters. It was kind of interesting to see these obscure characters that were once part of Toontown servers or games, for them just to be here one moment and gone another. It's a weird topic I've never really talked about before or seen anyone bring up. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and now I'll fade away and disappear from this video until it goes to the outro.